I'm going to be talking to Minu Bakshi, who's a poet and an author and an academic and a translator, Spanish, of all things, about this incredible book called Tishnagi, the launch of which takes place tomorrow at the Nehru Centre, which is in Audley Street in the centre of London. Minu, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Noel.
Now, what does a nice Sikh girl like you end up doing, being drawn into the world of Urdu poetry? How did this happen?
You know, this happened when I was, I think, 16 or 17, and I was the typical middle-class girl, a Beatles fan with the guitar in my hand. I used to actually sing. I was born with a good voice. In Delhi, yes, very much. And I was at that time studying in the Miranda House. You know, going back 35, 40 years, anybody who didn't get married till whenever just continued studying. It was, till she actually got married. And one day, Begum Akhtar came to the university and gave a concert. And I heard her, and that was like, my God, I just got mesmerized. So overpowered and overtaken by her voice and the words that she sang, even though I did not, it was Urdu, of course. But Urdu, as a girl who speaks Punjabi and Hindi, I could understand most of it, but not all. And I lost my sleep pretty much the whole week. I just couldn't sleep and could not get her out of my head. So that's when I started my search for finding her, basically, and her records and her music. And that was the end of the guitar. And I bought myself a tanpura and I started training in Indian music. And of course, then it had to be Urdu, because...
Yeah, what was it about it? I mean, were you naturally someone who had deeply romantic leanings? Were you someone who had embraced Western poetry? Had you been reading Keats and Wordsworth?
No, you'd be surprised. Not really. I wasn't, I loved good poetry, yes, but I had no great leanings towards poetry. But something in those words, the soulfulness, the sound of Urdu just took me over. And that's why I thought, if I can't understand it properly, I won't be able to do justice to it. And that's when I started learning Urdu. And I got so caught up that I actually would tell my family, and from a Sikh family, or my nieces, I would say, please call me Khala, because, that's what they call in Urdu. Or to my sister, please call me Appajan, because that's how. So I was completely overtaken by the sound of the language. And then the poetry, once I started discovering it, it just drove me crazy, I have to tell you that.
For those people who are not experts in linguistics, where does Urdu differ from Punjabi in terms of its flow and its ability to be able to convey certain emotions?
Urdu is much more sweeter than Punjabi. Punjabi is it does have the words, but it's rough. So
hard consonants.
Yes, it's much harsher in its sound as well, and in the way it is spoken. Whereas Urdu, you can badmouth somebody and it sounds, oh my God, it's so sweet.
It's a bit like French in that way.
Yes. It's very musical. It's got a lot of words, so what you can say in Urdu, I try to translate my poetry and I fail, because what I can say in 3 words in Urdu, I somehow cannot manage to say it in English. And I have studied English all the time. So to me, poetry just comes in Urdu. I know a lot of Spanish, but I try to write poetry, it doesn't come naturally. Somehow, I don't know, there is also some spiritual connect somewhere, because it just flows into me through Urdu.
If you look through the history of Urdu poetry, it seems to be wholly peopled by men. And men seem to be the ones pushed to the fore. And that is not to say, of course, that there weren't women doing it, were they? It was a woman who inspired you initially.
That's right. But the woman that inspired me was a singer, not a writer.
Yeah.
But I think there is a cultural reason.
She was singing other people's
Yes, she sang all the great poets like Ghalib and Momin and Mir, etc. So that's my introduction to Urdu poetry was through her music.
Right.
That's how it came about. But I think there's a cultural reason for women not being... now they are. I know a very, very good poet from Pakistan who's a woman and very well known and well accepted, Praveen Shakir. She writes beautiful poetry and is now well known as well. But I think inherently women do not expose their emotions, because it's all about love. It could be, and they get confused, or people confuse that divine love or the love for the spiritual love for maybe something human, something physical. So I think they just keep it to themselves. That's the way I see it, because I get asked many times, how can you're a happily married woman, how do you write this kind of poetry, and what does your husband have to say about it?
Because there's nothing salacious about it. So when you ask that question, when someone says, how can you write this kind of poetry, it's not overly erotic, it's not salacious.
No, it's not erotic at all.
No.
But it is a complete surrender. My poetry is submission, surrender, a lot of love, yearning there. So there is an element of loneliness at times. So when you're
trying anti-feminist then? If you're a woman writing it and talking about submission, can it be misconstrued that you cannot be a feminist and write Urdu poetry?
Yes, I have been told that then, oh my God, you give yourself like that to any man or to any whatever higher power that you're looking at. I mean, but that's the way it is. I'm not a feminist, actually. So.
Oh, you wouldn't describe yourself as well?
No, I'm really, in the sense that I can live with both worlds, I would have to say, but I'm not overtly feminist, no.
How difficult was it to learn Urdu? I mean, Urdu, Hindi and Punjabi do have roots in the same place, and there is interplay between the languages.
Yes.
But you're not talking about learning Urdu in order to order a coffee or to find out when the trains are turning up.
Correct.
You're learning Urdu in a very high-flown way, aren't you?
That's right. I studied it at the university. I learned a lot through reading a lot of poetry. Besides, of course, learning. The script is difficult. It's not easy, I have to say. And your knowing Hindi or Punjabi doesn't help as far as writing goes or reading goes. But it does help you to understand. I have read a lot of poetry, and also since I was a singer, for me the meters came in very easily in my head, because everything, you have a rhythm, because if you've learnt music, you already know. So when I write poetry, it just comes in the right meter, because I know this will work or this will not work. So, but learning the language, it is difficult, it's a lot of hard work, and it's a lot of reading and a lot of researching as well.
And you, like many an artist, spent some time perhaps not quite as confident about your output, and it took other people to encourage you, didn't it?
Yes.
I mean, you were sitting on a pile of these poems for some time, weren't you?
Yes, I actually, surprisingly, my first mushaira, as in the poetry reading, was in 1974, when I was just 18 maybe. That was in a youth program. That's just right after, listening to Begum Akhtar, and I just happened to write a few things. At that time, what I used to do, if I forgot a ghazal, I would just add, for myself in the same meter. It came easy to me. I wrote and I added something. So I sent that, and it actually got broadcasted at that time. And I was paid 20 rupees for it. I remember it like yesterday.
There's an actual copy of that in the book, isn't there?
Yes. I put that letter in there.
Yeah, well, that's a milestone, isn't it?
Yes.
The book would not be here today.
That's true. So it began like that. And I then, whenever I felt very strongly, intensely about things, maybe about something I didn't like or something I liked or somebody I liked, or, at that time, I mean, the issues were different. Today, there's much more depth in what you write. But at that time, it was like rhyming and putting things together. So I did start, whenever I felt very intensely about a thing, I used to write things, and I should just put. Never thought of myself as a poet, really. And then, since after this whole BlackBerry business started and WhatsApp started and things like that, where you could, so I'd write a couplet and I'd send it to a friend to say, how is it? People who knew Urdu. And they would say, oh my God, this is fabulous. Whose is it? And I would say, sheepishly, it's mine. And so, what are you doing sitting in all this? So a couple of them sort of said, you need to push this and put it together. And so it took me like 3 to 4 years just to put this book together.
Now, you were essentially a teenager with Western leanings in terms of music.
Yes.
And you were just drawn into this beautiful world. How can that be replicated in 2014 to a new generation? The question is, of course, how do you stop this kind of study being seen as archaic and out of touch and not part of the new India or the new Pakistan?
Yeah, it's a pity, because even in I went to do a mushaira in Lucknow, in Patna, places which are predominantly Urdu speaking, and Urdu is not obligatory in schools. I think the first thing is to start to teach the children Urdu. Even people from Muslim background, the kids don't speak Urdu anymore. It's very
in
very
India,
in India. Yeah, they don't. And when some of the parents talk to me and say, "Oh my God, but you're not even Muslim, and you speak this Urdu," and our kids don't do it because they don't. It has to start from the family. The parents have to encourage the kids and expose them to this beautiful, this genre of writing. I wish I could, but by presenting this book and this book got awarded as the best Urdu poetry book, and I think as a non-Urdu speaker, this is my offering, and that if I can do it, anybody can. Anybody, at least who belongs to that milieu, could do that.
I mean, this is a real kind of collector's item of a book. It's a grandiose book. It's beautiful form and content, most definitely in balance with each other in the book. This is not a school book. This is not something that a school can have. Is there a plan to make an abridged version?
Yes, I already have. I have, the academic version, which are smaller version, both in Hindi, even in the Devanagari script, and in Urdu, which have gone to all the libraries. I have sent them, and I donate them to schools and anybody else who would want them, because it's then easy reading. The big book is my journey as well, whereas the smaller books are just a book of poetry, which people can, and it's very cheap. You can buy it for 200 rupees. It's nothing. So I have done that bit as well.
Well, look, as a little bit of a treat for you and our listeners, we're going to play now a ghazal by Begum Akhtar.
Oh, wonderful.
For
wonderful, thank you.
And we'll do that, and then afterwards we'll come back and speak to you some more minutes. You disappeared there, didn't you?
Well, I have got goose flesh, and I'm nostalgia. I've been with her when she sang that so many times. It's amongst the ones that she sang in, because it's very simple words. Even if you just knew Hindi, you would understand.
Well, I don't know any. So if you could perhaps tell us what she's singing.
No, I mean, one of the couplet in which says that I was thinking that when it'll rain wine or alcohol, and when it did rain, it broke my heart, because of course it wasn't like that. Which really you can, when she says sharab, she's talking, but it could be love. It might rain love, and it didn't happen when it finally did rain. So it just says that the world, I mean, broke my heart by being. Inayat is something, inayat is the plural of inayat, which somebody is giving you something, but she said that whatever I got from the world actually broke my heart. So it's quite beautiful. I feel very sorry for people who don't understand it, honestly, yes. I do.
Well, feel some sympathy for me.
Sorry.
But one thing I do understand is soul in music, and yes. I can hear the difference between someone who is singing from their soul and someone who is singing just from their throat and their lungs.
Yes.
And there is a huge difference. There's a huge difference. So how does Urdu poetry, and actually specifically ghazals, how do they find different ways of talking about this? Because the idea is, I suppose, is that there's only so many ways that you can express the same feelings.
Yeah, that's true.
So there is a constant search. I mean, there's a constant exploratory nature of it to try and find out how is the different ways you can express love.
Yeah. The ghazal, the thing in the ghazal is that they don't, the good ghazal are meant to be the ones that don't say it obviously. They don't say, I love you.
So it's through metaphor and simile.
It's always, anybody can find a lot of ways of saying the same thing, but because it's the nicer ghazal, you never say, I love you. That's the way you would say in English, but they would say it in some ways, and the listener, anybody who's sensitive, understands what is being said. So it's difficult, and yet it's very possible, because you have the same thing repeated. I mean, the message is perhaps the same, but the words chosen are so different, and in such different ways.
So that's quite a search that you have to go on, isn't it, to find that?
Yes.
And looking for metaphors all the time, because as you said, as you mentioned sharab there, I mean, love is an addiction.
Exactly. So
and it's intoxicating, of course.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So when they say that they thought it's going to be raining sharab, it doesn't really necessarily mean raining sharab. So you have to see what he's trying to say.
Wow, okay. Mm-hmm. And does it then, I'm just trying to think about when you sit down to write it, whether it's a cat and mouse game between the writer and the reader.
Some could be, yes, because you may interpret it entirely different way than the writer actually.
But will a writer ever admit to how it's interpreted, or does the writer want you to make those assumptions yourself?
They want you to. I mean, like, for example, if I write, then I am not wanting to really tell them what I'm saying. So it's what you get out of it.
You have to work it out, right? You have to work it out. Is that sacrilege of the highest order to mix the poetry with other languages?
No, I don't think poetry is kind of mixed, but it is normal. People are studying English all the time. In India, for example, more than Hindi is the English. That's the actual common language. In the South, they don't speak Hindi at all. No, so to communicate, it's English. So it's quite inevitable that you will have this overlapping. But as long as people speak at home their native language, it will survive. But the point is that even in at least in the educated upper class, they just all talk in English. They think it's just below their, I don't know, somehow they do feel that if you speak in Punjabi, oh my God, that's not, it's uncool. It's not,
That would be the language your domestics, you would speak to your domestics.
Yeah, so that is what is unfortunate. But if we kind of all insist to speak your native tongue in the house, I think we will survive.
Tell me, when it came to actually compiling this beautiful book, how do you choose what to leave in and what to leave out? Are you self-critical enough to be able to do that, or did you need quite
I am, and also I have to say that once I decided I was going to do it, I did go to, because I teach in the university, Nehru University, so I went to the Urdu department. I spoke to the head of department, so I got an expert to look at it, because since I'm not native Urdu speaker, it needed to be looked into, and so we did make some corrections. We added some. I did, and left out a few, but not very many. I kind of put everything that I wrote, and I still have. I mean, I'm ready with my next collection, but I'm just. It'll take me a couple of years to design a book that would match something like this. I've set myself a very high standard.
And like any artistic endeavour, is it something that you just have to wait for the muse to strike you? Or is it something that you can sit down and say, right, an hour a day, I'm going to sit there?
No, I've never written. I've never been able to write, okay, today I'm going to write. No. And my writing actually happens at night, because the day is going to the university, taking classes. In the afternoon, I practice my music.
Yeah.
So it's only at night when I'm actually with myself. Because otherwise, how they go, you have your chores, you have a husband, you have children, you have responsibilities. So for me, sometimes it just flows in, but it's always at night, pretty much, or when I'm traveling on the aircraft. I'm very, very, when you have 8 hours, 10 hours flying in, just the time your mind is idle.
Solitude.
With yourself. Yeah. It just flows. I think maximum I write at night or on the aircraft. Yeah, strangely.
And when it begins, this outpouring.
That's right.
How difficult is it to stop it? Because of course
sometimes very difficult. Sometimes
you want to sleep. I mean, you've got a job. You've got 3 children.
But you know what? Now earlier I used to actually put on the light and start writing a couple of years ago. But now, and of course, my husband would wake up and say, "Now, what the hell? It's the middle of the night." But since this whole system of telephones where you can put everything down, it became that much easier, because at least you didn't disturb anybody else. But I lose my sleep because I have realized if you let it go, in the morning you've lost it. It just doesn't come back. It's so strange. It won't come back. So,
did you make your husband aware of this addiction?
No.
Did you hide it from him in the early days?
No, because earlier I used to. I don't think I made a. I would sometimes he would even record it. I had that little dictaphone, whisper in it and
yeah.
But at some point he caught on that I was doing something funny at night. But now
he's quite relieved to find it was only poetry. Yeah.
Yes, and now he just sleeps through it. It's okay.
Because of course, from the earlier stage, from your teenage years, it is something that very much grips you. And I speak to so many artists and interview so many artists, and I always feel slightly sorry for their partners, because you have to kind of explain to partners that, yes, I love you, but there is something else that I love. And, and it's not just I love going to the odd cricket match. Yeah. It's something that is quite all-encompassing.
Yes, it is. But I've been very lucky. My husband, somehow, he's 9 years older to me. He kind of... even as a youngster, I mean, he was very supportive, I have to say that.
And fairly philosophical about your needs.
Yes.
But also, as well, of course, you wouldn't be the wife you were if that was tried to inhibit that in any way.
That's right.
You need that. It's part of your life. It's part of your DNA to be able to do
this. Yes.
But Tishnagi is the name of the collection.
Tishnagi, the eyes are Tishnagi, and it means the thirst.
The thirst. Wow. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you, Nihal, and thank you, everybody who's been listening.